Hello, I'm Dr. Kelli Palfy. I am the author of Men Too: Unspoken Truths About Male Sexual Abuse. I just want to give a huge shout out to y'all there gathered at FatherCon. I wish I could be there in person for this amazing gathering. In case you're curious or you have trust issues as to why a woman started advocating for male survivors of sexual abuse, the reason is that prior to becoming a psychologist, I was an RCMP officer, where I had my eyes opened. I worked in the Integrated Child Sexual Exploitation Unit where I was investigating sex crimes committed against children internationally. Sex tourism. Plus, we investigated any offenses involving the possession, production, and distribution of child pornographic images. I had my eyes opened in 2004 when former pro hockey player Sheldon Kennedy came and spoke to us about why he hadn't spoken up about his abuse sooner. His reasons literally opened my eyes to the issues that I now advocate about. His primary reason was that his offender was his coach, the very person who had connections to help him to go pro. Reporting him would literally jeopardize his career. He also knew the finances he was now making were literally helping his parents out of poverty. And here's the one that really enraged me. He also felt that nobody cared or no one would help. He believed that the parents of his teammates already knew what was going on, but did nothing. That just made me furious. It still does. One thing he spoke to us about was the fact that he felt like he was leading a double life. That was the part that I related to personally. He said that on one hand he was a pro hockey player, but on the other he was being abused and he felt powerless to stop it. In one really tiny way, I got that. Although my situation was different, I too was in a career where I thought I was going to be forever, and I was being bullied and I felt powerless to stop it. But the difference is, his was sexual abuse, mine was bullying, and he was a teenage boy. I was an adult with an education, a badge, and a gun. When he spoke, his reasons literally broke my heart. I was left with this profound awareness that society just fails boys and men. I knew there were no resources for men. Prior to becoming a police lady, I had worked in corrections. And I remembered wondering, why are there so many men in prison? I mean, compared to women, why so many? And I never got the answer to that question. But when he began to speak about how he turned to drugs and alcohol to cope, I wondered if this might be why there were so many men in prison. Men who maybe as boys had no support. Fast forward a few years later, after I actually did lose my career to the bullying, I was pretty desperate to find another area of work to be passionate about. Thankfully, I had already begun pursuing my master's degree, but for other reasons, so I just stayed in school and I hoped for the best. One day, one of my professors mentioned that he worked with male survivors of sexual abuse, and it was like a little bit of light and life came back into my otherwise deeply depressed state. I felt hope for the first time in a long time. I remembered my previous awareness of how society literally fails boys and men, and I believed that maybe with my background as a police officer, what I'd learned and what I'd seen, that as a psychologist, I could make a difference for boys and men. I knew I had a lot to learn, and I knew that I'd have to teach others what I learned along the way. I mean, the crazy thing is back in the day, I was considered the expert, and I knew nothing about male sexual abuse. So in 2016, I completed my doctoral research where I examined why so few boys and men were coming forward. What I learned was that boys and men have a lot of very valid, complex, and multifaceted reasons for not seeking support. Reasons that change, grow, and morph as they grow, yet exist across their entire lifetimes. I learned that some of the more common reasons for not reporting are things like fear of their offender, fear things could get worse if they disclosed, fear of being in trouble, fear of being labeled as an offender, fear of being labeled as homosexual, confusion about their body's response to the trauma, confusion about their own memory loss. The reason that shocked me the most was that oftentimes boys were simply doing what boys and men are conditioned to do from their youth, which is protecting others. They were protecting others from the information that they thought would be too hard for them to handle. I also learned that not all boys who are victim grow up to be men who go to jail. Sorry, but I had to learn that. Oftentimes, male victims marry, attain high statuses in their career, and go on to have children of their own. However, despite their careers and other personal accomplishments, many of these executives, husbands, and fathers are often still finding it very difficult to cope with the memories of their abuse. I wrote Men Too to validate, support, and bring mental clarity to the experiences of male survivors. It is designed to help male victims of sexual abuse make sense of what happened to them and to help them better understand why they think, feel, and act the way they do. My primary goal is simply to make a difference in this otherwise overlooked population. My secondary goal is to help the families and helping professionals around male survivors better understand and recognize them. Why? Because when we do nice things for other people, we feel good. Blessings to you all.